Hi everyone. Today I would like to discuss the difference between PTSD and complex PTSD. What is important to know about complex PTSD? And if you do relate to the things I'm going to be sharing today, what do you do about it? What are some suggested ways to heal, and is there hope? And I'll cut to the chase right off the bat. Absolutely, there is hope to heal from complex PTSD, but it's a lengthy process and it's one that requires baby steps because it's something that didn't happen overnight. I'm going to identify 3 key points that maybe you could take towards feeling better. But before I get to those, let's pause and look at PTSD, which is in the DSM-5, the statistical manual, as a disorder, an anxiety disorder. I don't like that concept because I feel that PTSD and complex PTSD issues are really normal human responses to abnormal situations or incidents or traumatic events. So to think that you have a disorder because there's something wrong with you right off the bat, that sets the tone that, oh, I'm messed up. Well, you may feel like you're messed up, but I think it's super important to understand that there are many, many humans walking around with the same kind of manifestations from traumatic events that you also may be feeling. So, loud and clear, you are not alone. PTSD frequently refers to an event or a few events that are specific and they happened. People would know about, for example, a car accident or even combat or somebody you love dying. And let me also add that there may be some things that I'm going to be saying today that could be triggering. And if you do feel that you're getting dysregulated, just turn it off and take some good care of yourself and maybe come back a little while later, little sound bites of this kind of stuff. Because if you haven't really thought about these things and now you're listening, it could trigger you. So complex PTSD refers to ongoing, lengthy trauma, abuse, neglect, and it is primarily talking about these things happen to someone at a very vulnerable time in their life, meaning early childhood or adolescence, when the person is vulnerable and needs a safe adult to be present and provide their needs. And as we go on in our lives as children on up to adolescent into teen years and early adulthood, there's different needs that we all have to have met. And if they're not met and then bad things continue to happen to the person, that is where we get the complex PTSD. So all of the things that are true of PTSD, meaning you feel like you're reliving the event or flashbacks or really disturbing nightmares or wanting to avoid certain people, places, and things, not knowing that the trauma is over, all of those blunting of your feelings, feeling like you're not going to have a very long life, all of those symptoms of PTSD, those are true with complex PTSD. And then there's more. And that's what makes complex PTSD more unique and also much more difficult to deal with, to heal from, and so often people don't even recognize that it's a thing, and that's what's going on with them. It's a lot harder to live your life with complex PTSD as well. Um, some of the concepts that I wanted to share with you today are, so all those symptoms that I just described are present at different times, but with complex PTSD, there's also more difficulty regulating the emotions. And often there could be struggles with having explosive anger and just this recurrent deep sadness, depression, and recurrent suicidal thoughts that are just persistent and are very challenging to get them to calm down. There's also, with complex PTSD, very negative self-talk, a feeling of helplessness, just a pervasive feeling of guilt and shame. With PTSD, often there's guilt, survivor's guilt, and complex PTSD, there can be that. And in addition, this evasive just sense of my very existence is wrong, like guilt for being alive, guilt for having emotions or thoughts or even presence. So obviously, those are very difficult to live with. And the flooding of shame. Sometimes it can feel like just out of the blue, there's this big wave of shame, and the person suddenly can't make eye contact or just wants to leave, and you can just see the shrinking down into their shell. These behaviors and emotions and struggles that I just described, if you can think of it in terms of what the person experiencing these things, what they grew up with, it would all of a sudden start to make sense. So let's say a child is being neglected and or being abused, and the message is, you're a bother, or you're getting in the way of my life, said the parent to the child, or everything is your fault. The child really, that becomes their reality if it's pervasive and over and over and over. And there's really, when you're a child, where are you going? You can't fight and you can't flight because you are totally dependent on these adults that are supposed to be taking care of you. So there's no fight and flight because it's not safe. The child ends up doing the dissociative, despair, shut down, internalizing, it's all my fault, and just kind of going someplace else in their mind as a way to survive. And that kind of becomes the default setting. So if you're a person that experiences this, if this is making sense to you, it might be helpful moving forward to remember, my depression or the sadness, it's a default, not because there's something wrong with me, but because my system learned that it's safer to stay under the radar and lie low than to even show up in my life, because there's consequences for being present in abusive situations. It's super sad, it's super tragic, and sadly it's very common. But there is hope, and I'm going to explain that to you in a minute, just different ways that we can start changing those thought patterns around. But first, I want to explain a concept to you that until recently I didn't give it much thought, and I remember back in undergrad learning about this concept, double bind, and now I'm saying it all the time because all of a sudden it really clicked with me. They used to think that if a child is brought up in a double bind situation, continual double binds, that could lead to schizophrenia, because the double bind is kind of schizophrenic thinking. I don't think they could really prove that, and that whole thought process, I haven't heard much about that lately. You can research it, and I think they found it very difficult to prove. But we are realizing over and over that double binds totally contribute to the complex PTSD. So what is a double bind? It is basically you're damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of scenario. And there's mild ones and sort of funny ones. Like, for example, if like we're trying to eat healthy and my husband goes to the store and then he comes home and, okay, we're gonna eat healthy. I really hope you got some good stuff, and because he likes to do the shopping, and yep. Well, let's say I'm feeling a little vulnerable or a little and I say, did you get any ice cream? Well, no, we're eating healthy. Oh, why didn't you get the ice cream? So and then we kind of laugh because I'm not serious, hopefully, most of the time. But that's what I mean by a double bind. We're eating healthy, so we're not getting ice cream to have in the house. I'm feeling sad. I want ice cream. What's wrong with you? Why didn't you get us ice cream? That is a double bind. In childhood, where the child doesn't have the ability to really make any of their own choices or to exert any kind of personal power, it becomes very destructive. For example, a child is taught with severe consequence, you don't ever talk to strangers. So let's say the child has an experience with a stranger that was scary, like the stranger was talking to them inappropriately or was trying to lure the child. The child goes home, tells the parent, and then instead of being made to feel safe and we're going to go find out what's going on and you did the right thing to tell me because of course we want you to be safe, the child gets the message, well, you never talk to strangers. So the child learns, oh, that's my fault. Okay, fast forward a few weeks, the child remembers, all right, don't talk to strangers, it's bad. And maybe the child even got beat for reporting this dangerous situation. Fast forward a few weeks, maybe somebody the family wants to impress that the child doesn't know visits the home, and the stranger says to the child, well, hi honey, what's your name? And the child, deer in the headlight, I'm not supposed to say anything, I'll get in trouble, never talk to strangers. And then later they get beat because when someone asks you a question, you always answer them. You made us look bad. And then they get beat again. So you can understand the poor child is caught in this catch-22 double bind where don't talk to strangers. And then if I don't answer strangers, I'm bad. No matter which way we slice it, we're bad. It's our fault and there's consequences. Severe ones for the child. If any of this is resonating with you and you got a steady diet of that could be that you grew up in a traumatic household, and the way that you're feeling, it kind of would make sense then. That's my hope, that to help you make sense. The other thing I forgot to mention when I was listing why complex PTSD is different from PTSD, another aspect is with complex PTSD, the person has an uncanny ability to detach from that childhood experience. There's dissociation or depersonalization or just not able to connect that dot. For example, if it's PTSD from an accident, you may not want to think about it, and it may be horrible to think about it, but it makes sense why you're feeling that way. With complex PTSD, like I said, it's very, very difficult for the person to identify, yeah, my childhood was messed up. No wonder I feel this way. It's very difficult to have insight because it's such a brainwashing experience, for lack of a better term. Okay, so good news. The 3 steps that I would suggest right off the top here is, number 1 is having an awareness. So this video that I'm sharing, the information that I'm sharing, that can scratch the surface. I encourage you to look up double binds, look up complex PTSD, power over, It's really gaslighting. Everybody's heard about gaslighting for adults in toxic relationships as an adult, but as a child, in effect, the parent is gaslighting the child. So, awareness, educating yourself about the concept of complex PTSD and how it manifests. The second point that is very important in moving forward with healing is getting safe people around you. If we're or continue to be around the same people, lots of times that did the double binds to us as children, and we're still getting a steady diet of them or other family members or different relationships that really ring true, all of this, it's time to really take a look. And I'm not saying you cut off every relationship, but once we have that awareness, then we can detect when it's happening again. When you get that, wait a minute, this is a double, come here, go away, or, all of a sudden I'm getting a mixed message, you can have an awareness of that and step back from that engagement and figure out the next right thing to do. But in the meantime, building your support network of people that are emotionally safe. That can be in the form of different groups you might join, or friends, other family members that also have been through the same thing and can relate without over relating. That's important too. And then the third step as beginning steps towards healing is gentle self-care. Catching it when you're saying horrible things to yourself, catching those negative beliefs, and if you can at all, having the curious mindset like, whoa, there's that thought again. Where's that coming from? What part of me continues to say that? Or even when you feel shame, just because you feel shame, our emotions are not facts. So really being aware of the thoughts that we may be having about ourselves and the feelings that may just bubble up, and exploring that a little bit more with curiosity. It's very difficult to do all by yourself, unless you have quite a few skills and the support of a therapist or some other very safe person. Many of you know I am an EMDR trained therapist, and EMDR can be very effective. And with complex PTSD, EMDR has to go slowly. So if you're reaching out to an EMDR therapist, maybe making sure they understand about complex PTSD. Standard PTSD and EMDR are very effective. Complex PTSD, titrating, pendulating, going very slowly, because we just don't want to overwhelm that system back into the default mode of I am bad and, it's all my fault. So little baby steps. I hope that's been helpful for you. And if there's any other topics or more questions, please reach out to me. And I thank you so much for subscribing and for your attention today.